Hi there, Jonathan Truss on yet another video on how to paint wildlife, and today I thought you'd like to know how to paint a tiger eye. If you're going to be painting cats, you've got to get the eyes in the right place, of course, but you're also going to want to know how to paint a tiger's eye. Eyes are the most important. It's the first thing anybody looks at when they look at your painting. If it's of a tiger or a lion or whatever, it's the eyes. They've got to be right as well, not too big, not too small. And we're going to use wet and wet techniques and all sorts of other things that I'll talk about while I'm going through the process of painting that. It shouldn't take very long actually. We're going to probably take about 30 minutes for me to paint that or something like that. You can usually let it dry and build it up in colours and stages. I'll try and get as much as I can down now so you can see the process. Hopefully not too boring, but hopefully really useful. Now I've learned a lot over the years how to paint eyes, and I know from experience if you're going to paint two tigers' eyes like this, don't paint the pupils in first, leave that to the very end, because you can then decide where you want the pupils to be. They've got to be looking at the viewer. A lot of cats are actually a little bit cross-eyed, so keep that in mind if you're going to paint the whole thing. But for today, I'm just going to tell you how to paint that. Okay, so let's get started how to paint a tiger eye. The first thing I've done, as I've mentioned in a previous video, I'll put a link up for you, how to paint fur and also how to prep a canvas. I think I've got videos up on all of that. So just going to concentrate mainly on this area here on this particular video. So as I say, if you want to paint two eyes, don't paint this in quite yet. That's the pupil. You want to make sure that cat's looking at you if it's a portrait, and it's supposed to, of course. Right, just going to put in some dark areas to start with, and you'll find that you'll blend this colour into this colour and get a nice soft edge around here. You don't want it to be too hard. You don't want a hard edge. As a very famous artist once said to me, an animal artist, I'll mention no names, he said, Jonathan Truss, he said, there's no hard edges in your paintings. And I didn't really understand what he meant actually, but I understand now. You've got to blend those edges. It just seems to make the painting work. So I'm just putting a dark area in here. I'm not going to concentrate too much on these areas. I will a little bit because it will set the whole thing off. This is a bit of ivory black with some burnt umber. And the burnt umber just warms it up a little bit. I'm not fussing to do these markings exactly right. I'm just getting the paint down for you. Using quite a big brush here. I'm not very careful with my brushes actually. I tend to get through quite a lot, so I don't spend a lot of money on them. Right, and now there's no thinners here. This is just straight oil, straight out of the tube. I'm using Griffin oil at the moment. That's fast drying oil, which is really lovely actually because it does dry fast. I mean, if you're painting in plein air and you're in a very warm climate, it'll dry very quickly. Sometimes too quickly actually, if you don't want to do wet and wet. For instance, wet and wet, here we are. I'm just going to put some titanium white. I'm not cleaning the brush either. And here's another thing. If you clean that brushes with your brush with white spirit, and you've cleaned it now, and you've wiped it, and you're going back into another colour, that white spirit is still on that brush, and when you come back into it, you're going to get in all sorts of messes, and you're just going to make a mess. So be careful with that. I just wipe the brush and use the same one. All these colours kind of gel well together anyway. So as you can see, I'm just popping it on here. Now that nice soft blend there, hardly any effort whatsoever. You can get rid of that hard edge. And you always want to go slightly darker to start with. You go light over dark when you're painting in oils. You can go back in and make it lighter and darker or whatever, but generally you'll find a lot easier to create depth if you go light over dark. Now again, no medium on this at all. If you are using medium, only one rule, and you know you've heard of it before, and there's plenty of other videos I expect on YouTube about that, and it's fat over lean, thick over thin. If you go thin over thick, your paint's going to crack. So be aware of that. You don't want that. That is to be avoided. And also what you don't want as well, there's lots of other colours in here as well. I'm just keeping this quite simple for you guys for now, but there are other colours in here. I can drop some orange and burnt umber in here as well if I wanted to, somewhere around here. There we go. Again, blend it in, adding more colour as we go. I'm going to keep this very quick and very simple. I'm not going to fuss too much with the fur because I've already covered that in my previous video. And as I said, I'll put the link above for you. Okay, just going to go one more above here, just before this dries. I don't want that to dry and create a hard edge, so I'm just going to blend that in a little bit. You can use your finger as well, and it's quite a useful tool using your finger like that. If I wipe that and I hadn't prepped this board, if I'm doing that, you'll just see white underneath. So it's just prepping the board properly, as in the previous video. You'll find it makes life a lot easier for you. There we go. Anyway, right, here we go. So now we're going to go into the eye. I'm going to start by just putting a little black in that area there. I certainly wouldn't do that. As I said, if I was doing the whole cat, I wouldn't do that. I would just actually do one whole area, and then I'd put the very, very last thing. I'd start to put the pupil in and build the colour. I just want to make sure that that pupil's in the right place. Here it doesn't matter, there's only one, so that's easy. So again, I'm just going to wipe the brush, not going to clean it, come back with some yellow ochre, and I will just try this, see how it works. Tiger's eyes are green and yellows and oranges, burnt umbers, there's all sorts of things in here. The pupil is never round, it's always a funny sort of shape. Just going to try it. And also, it's always darker at the top because the light's coming down, this eyebrow comes over and creates a shadow up here. Now this paint is still wet on the top, so once again you can hear acorns dropping on my roof. That's because it's very, very warm spring in the UK we had, and as we're coming into well, autumn now, winter soon, they're starting to drop. I think the squirrels are having a great time up there, do it on purpose. So again, this can, I'll take it actually out a clean brush now. Just going to blend that area in there, get rid of that hard edge. Now you won't do all of this eye in one sitting, if you like, or in one go. I'm just going to teach you the basics here, and I'll look a little bit crude, but you'll get the general idea. And again, if I'd had cleaned that brush and I put white spirit on it, I'd already be getting in a mess. This oil would not become very manageable at all. Don't try and do all of this in one go. You won't do it. You have to come back and let this dry, come back and do it again at another time. Don't try and paint around that. You don't have to fuss with it at all. So you can look at it. All the information is in there. Your photograph. Keep looking at that photograph, because everything you need to know is there. All you got to do is copy it. Pretty much as simple as that. And while that oil is still on this brush, see how a little bit of oil goes a long way. I can just blend that in. I'm going to add a little bit of burnt umber here and a little bit of orange, if you can see that. I always use these tear off palettes, I'm incredibly lazy. I can't be bothered to clean it at the end of the day. So I'm adding a little bit of colour into there already. Now I'm not fussing with edges here, I'm not fussing with it. No point in trying to get all this right and get, fuss around like that. Just want to get the oil on the canvas to start with, and then you can play around with it later on. Now this isn't dark enough. God, look at the acorns coming down. It's quite windy up there today. I'm just going to darken this a little bit more. So I've added a little bit more burnt umber and a little bit of black into there. And don't panic about, that's too much there. There's too much there as well. I'm just going to wipe the brush. Don't panic about that. Again, I'm not cleaning it. I'm just wiping it. All these highlights with the blues and everything else, that's the last thing you do. Don't even look at that to start with. Just look through it and look past it. Just get the colours down onto the canvas. Now these are quite green around here. Can you see that? I don't know if you can see that there. I'm not going to go into that bit. I want that to be a little bit lighter toned than this. So I'm going to try adding white, but I don't think that that's the same colour. Adding white will lighten that, and it will just kind of, you just lose the colour. You don't go overboard with the white. It's actually a different colour completely. I think that to me looks green. This here looks like a Naples yellow. You can actually just touch the photograph there and see whether that's the right colour or not. I can see clearly that that isn't. Sometimes when you're on here, you can't really see when it's not matched up to another colour. If I go like that, you can see that's not the right colour. Let's try and add a little bit of blue into that. There's no greens on here, it's just yellows. If I want to make it yellow. I could try getting a little bit of cad yellow actually, which I might try and do. I've got some in the drawer over there, and we'll have a go with that and see what this looks like. It's very hard to tell whether it looks green or not. No, that's not green enough for me. So I'm going to just grab some green, some cadmium yellow, and I'll make that green, and hopefully that will really sing. Okay, so what I've done here, I've actually put some yellow ochre, a little bit of cad yellow on my palette, and I've mixed that into French ultramarine blue. Don't want a cup of tea. French ultramarine blue. Not too much blue, just enough to make that go slightly green. You can see that, which is very similar to that colour there. You'll find the more you paint, the more experience you'll get, and the less time you'll spend trying to match colours. You'll know instinctively how to get a colour because you've just got used to it over the years. And also you can also cheat the light here. You can make this a little bit brighter, and that will give the whole thing, make it look more of a cylinder, if you like. A cylinder, is that right? Does that make sense? Make it look more convex, I suppose I should say. And that's the magic of it, to make that eye really sort of stand out like a ball. Again, if I had not painted this burnt umber underneath, this would all be white here and it wouldn't be so good. So don't forget to watch my video on how to prep your canvas. It literally took me, what, I don't know, 30 seconds, something like that. So simple, so quick. But wow, makes such a difference when you come to painting. And again, look at your photograph a lot. Don't let your hand do all the work. Use your eyes, not just your hand. You've got to use your eyes and think about what you're doing. Don't try and put too many highlights in too soon, because you'll end up making a right old mess. You want to get all this under painting done first to make it look right. And keep an eye on that photograph as well. That's working quite nicely. You have to see the big picture. You have to see past what you're painting. Don't try and rush ahead to get what's on top. Think about what's underneath. Paint what's underneath. What you can do, if you want to try this, you can get a bigger brush. This is a 1-inch and it's nice and soft. Just blend it out if you want and see what it looks like. Sometimes do that. It's quite interesting to see what you got, especially in the early stages. Probably not in the end, but in the early stages. So we're going to go back here now. Now, ideally in an ideal world, you'd stop now and let all of this dry. You can kill these edges here. I'm getting a bit of a hard edge here. You can get rid of that. Just get around there and kill that hard edge. There we go. Now that works really well as an underpainting. And if I was painting this without a camera watching me in real time, then I would probably put this down now and come back to it later after it's dried. This makes a really good undercoat or base coat, whatever you want to call it. Keep an eye on the shape when you're doing this. Keep an eye on what you're doing. And here's the trick, and it's very, very tricky. When you're painting two of these, try and do them at the same time. Don't do one and finish it, then go to the other eye, because you're never going to match that eye. You'll never get the colors right. Usually there's a light difference anyway. One eye's in shade and one's not. But I really recommend you do two at the same time. So get to this stage, go back and do the other bit. In fact, what I tend to do is do all this color first, go on the other eye and do the rest of the color on that other eye. Then come back, do this bit, then do that bit in the other eye. So you're repeating the process. Then when you finish it, both eyes look the same. They're all the same color. Because you'll never be able to do that again. You'll never be able to replicate these colors. You'll get something like it, but it won't be the same. Now once this is dry, all this area here that looks kind of fuzzy and muddy, you can come back with some black and burnt umber and go back in here. And then we'll put the highlights of blue around here to create the reflection, and down here as well. It'll look amazing. But you would let this dry. So what I might do now is put the hairdryer on this, because it's a fast drying oil, so I would never ever ever do this normally, and let this dry, and then I can come back and attack it again. Anyway, so here we go. I'm going to carry on here and see what happens. Trying to get these highlights in here. Yeah, I'm using really soft brushes here. They're all really soft. So if you, as I said, if you're using get a set of brushes and a box set of paints with your primary colours, you're going to get bristle brushes. And if you use bristle brushes doing this technique, you're going to get a right old mess, because it's not going to work, because we're using it. This is all kind of wet into wet, very softly applied, just building it up in layers slowly. Something like that little accident there, don't worry about it, just wipe it out. Now, I'm not cleaning this brush, I cannot tell you enough. If you clean that brush with white spirit on it, you're going to get into problems. You better make sure that brush is absolutely dry, because if it's got any white spirit on it, you're going to get in a right old mess. Always darker on the top here, always darker. Now, if I fuss too much with that now, I'm going to be wiping off what I've already done. There's no point. Now, for the sake of this video, I am going to rush along. Normally, honestly, I would stop now and I would go and do something else, carry on with another painting, come back when it's dry, next day, and get on with it. But we're going to carry on, and I'm just going to put some paint on the canvas here, on the board, and see if we can make this look like an eye in the short time I've got to show you. My old mate Dave Shepherd, he said to me, "How many paintings do you have on one time, Truss?" And I went, only a couple, David. And I know David had 3 or 4 sometimes, because he uses linseed oil, or he used to, and that takes such a long time to dry. You couldn't possibly do it like this with linseed oil. It would just drive you nuts. It would take so long. Always stand back and have a look at what you're doing as well. Helps to, pardon the phrase, get a fresh eye on it. Pardon the pun, I should say. Okay, let's put some dark areas in that pupil. Just in the middle. I'm just going with a little black here for now. As they say, there's no black in nature, which is true. There's going to be a bit of black on this painting. So I need a little bit more paint on there, a little bit more paint. It's not quite enough on the top here. It's getting a little bit thin. I'm starting to see the board through it. So let's just add a little bit of blue up to the top. I'm going to blend in with some yellow straight in. Again, I've not cleaned this brush once. Just blend that in. Right. Let's add a little bit of black in the top. It's quite satisfying doing this. Just in the top here to get that shape back. Kind of lost the shape a little bit. Starting to get a little bit muddy up there. And you'll find when your paint starts to dry, it starts to get a little bit sticky and unmanageable. It's in that sort of awkward stage where it's not manageable enough to do the wet in wet, and yet it's not dry enough either. It's not wet enough, it's not dry enough. It's just kind of sticky and quite annoying. So really you should just come back after it's completely dried, and it'll make life a lot easier for you. But here we are. I want to show you as quick as I can the basics. So we're going to finish now with this. I'm just going to put some highlights in so you can get the general idea. Okay, here we go. Just going to blend that in with my finger a little bit. Yeah, and that doesn't blend very well when that paint's sticky. It's getting sticky now. That's how fast this stuff dries. If you think this dries quickly, you should work in acrylics. Boy oh boy, couldn't do this in acrylics. I couldn't, but many could, and many do very, very well. Anyway, so okay, let's put some reflections in and see what happens. So we're going to get some blue and try and create that effect here, that sort of cylindrical effect, and make it look glassy. So I'm just going to wipe the brush really well. I could use another brush, but I'm going to use this one. So I quite like this brush. It's nice and soft. And if you're going back into wet paint, you want a soft brush, otherwise you're just going to take off everything you've already done. That's quite nice. So nice and white, Alkyd white, Griffin white. It's nice and nice big tube of that. Gonna add a little bit of French ultramarine blue that I've got there. Could use cerulean as well, maybe cobalt, and mix it all up and play around. I'm gonna keep it really simple for the for this video. I don't know how light that is until I get it on there. It's probably too light, but we're gonna get brave now with this. So here we go. That's how it's gonna be. So where your horizon is, gonna be somewhere up there. Now because the paint's wet underneath, it's going to blend with that paint. Now that's not a particularly good idea, because you want the blue, and you don't want to mix it up with the yellows and make green. You want the reflection of the sky. Well, the sky's not green, it's blue. So, but doing that, you'll get an idea of what I'm on about. A bit more blue. Going to overdo the blues a little bit so it doesn't mix so much. I'll still hang on to the blues. This is my horizon here. If you're doing the other eye as well, you're going to need to do this horizon exactly the same, obviously, or thereabouts. And some breakup here as well. Where you've got people looking at the tiger, you always get that reflection there. The person's there and there's another person there, or I actually saw somebody put the rails of the cage. They took the photograph in the zoo, obviously, and you could see the rails and the reflection, and that person actually hadn't realised. I said to them, "Well, you can see the rail." They said they didn't realise they'd done it. They just copied the photograph, didn't even know what it was, but you could see it there. Now ideally you're going to want to let that dry, and I think I'll let that dry, and then I'm going to come back to that and I'll post a photograph of what it looks like when it's dry, and I can go back into it for you guys, and I'll put the photograph at the end. Perhaps you've already seen it at the beginning actually. Just put a bit more paint on there, blend that out. And this here too is going to be blue. You can see that edge down here. That's all blue. It's a rather gorgeous blue. And again, I need to get this dry ready now and work at it after then. So what we're going to do now is leave this. Got to dry. It's getting too muddy. So even if it's quite dry, it's just a little bit sticky and difficult to work with. So be aware of that when you're painting your own. I'll probably come back tomorrow. I'll do 10 minutes on it and I'll post the finishing picture. So you'll be able to see what it looks like. But literally I'll spend another 10 minutes on it and that's it. So I'm just going to actually put a bit more of the paint around here too, so you can see what that looks like. And don't forget to check out my fur video. Really cool tips on how to make fur, how to paint fur. You're going to save a lot of time and hours and years of stress. Trust me. Just watch that video, and I'll finish that. I'll post the finished picture so you can have a look and see what it looks like. Don't forget, if you're going to paint a tiger, you've got to paint 2 of them. So good luck. Thanks very much. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you. See ya.